You're listening to The Bon Ray Show. It's 8 in the evening. Tune in every night at 8 to listen to The Bon Ray Show on Irish News Radio or ITV.
The Bon Ray Show on ITV.ie and Irish News Radio. Today, hopefully, we'll be having an interview with Jada Francis shortly. So we'll be talking about her persecution for speaking out about Islam and about all the children who've been gang raped. And as today is Gruesome Tuesday, we will be talking about some of the gruesome things that have happened in the UK and what is happening here and what our media is hiding, and exactly what's happened to Britain First or anybody in the UK who speaks out. It's happening here. We will be persecuted with titles called hate speech, normal, fascist, racist, bigots, Islamophobic, anything that they can stop. Because the powers that want the destruction of Ireland, UK and all the Western countries want Islam and other violent ideologies in that will absolutely destroy and cause genocide, because they want to destroy the very fabric of who we are and what we're about. And if you have these young violent men, which majority are young men of a fighting age, to come into a country with beliefs that women are less than dirt, when they see young girls, as what will happen in Bray, going to their teen disco. Now anybody who has sense will have got out, but of course the stupid liberals or even people who won't be able to get out won't be able to stop their daughters living their lives, and will be going out with their clothes, and like Irish teenager girls kind of go with short mini skirts. Not that that's an excuse, but you will be picking them up from ditches, and maybe sometimes that'll actually be better than what the torture they will go through from the gang rapes. And from what we've seen in the UK, we know what's coming to those girls in Bray. And not just the young girls, it'll be the old women, it'll be women of any age are in extreme danger, because this is their ideology. They've been taught from a young age women are nothing, because their own women have been brainwashed and thought that they are nothing, have no value, and know that their life can be taken at any particular time for no reason at all, just that some male decides he doesn't want you because maybe you're too pretty and you didn't like him, or maybe any reason at all. It doesn't even have to be a reason, because you're a female. Now I'm totally against abortion, but sometimes I do see that if I was born into that, you'd be better off dead than being a female in this culture, because Islam, it's even worse than slavery. It's worse than apartheid. It is absolutely being born a female. You're born into a life of torture. And torture at times, this is why I used to be always wondering why you see the women when they're being stoned and they never scream out, they never cry for help, they never scream. I always wonder, why do they die in silence? And the more I studied Islam and understood Islam, the more I realised that they're probably quite, even though it's horrible, horrific torture, death, being stoned, bashing, half dead, feeling horrific pain for what could go on an hour, 2 hours. I don't know how long these last. Horrific. One stone cracks your head open and maybe you're cracked unconscious. And they keep hitting you and hitting you. But what I realised, why they don't scream out, why they don't cry for help, because their life, from the time they were born, has been tortured. They don't know anything else. And in one way, they're probably hoping that that last stone ends it for them, because they have no life. From the time they were told they were nothing, they heard that there was a girl in the family, people were, oh God, as if that's a devil was born or something dirty. It was a female, not quite right. It wasn't a boy. Then they all knew that her female parts would be chopped off because she has no right to enjoy sex because she's a female. She's no right. From the time she's 9, she becomes a woman. She must be covered up because she's tempting males, because she's some sort of evil, dirty possession. So they must cover up. And for every time she's abused by her brothers, her father, her uncles, violently, sexually, whatever, she's a piece of dirt. This is why it's taken me a long time to understand when they put her in, and so sometimes she goes in herself, into this hole that they bury her in and they shove it in. And you see the fathers and the uncles, her own family, her brothers, screaming horrendous names at her. And then they start whacking, and she's sometimes covered completely up. Sometimes they take some of it off to let you see her dying in pain. And as soon as she's dead or she's dying in horrific pain, you see the male members jumping up and down with delight. Allah is good, Allah Akbar, Allah is good, Allah is the greatest, God is the greatest. Your God is the greatest for destroying a female that you're supposed to love, your sister, your mother, your daughter, your niece, because she was born with a vagina. This is the people the Irish government want to bring in. Through the EU, through the UN. And they know exactly what's coming. And that is why they're bringing it in. They want to destroy Irish. When you destroy the Irish female, they're destroying the Irish male through trying to get him to feel for these men who murder and rape his sisters, his daughter, his mother. There's a few ways they're quite doing it. Through porn, because porn is usually violent, and the most selling porn is usually violent towards women, dehumanizing them. You start a process of dehumanizing them. So the old male of Ireland, which would have opened doors, would have, like if you went into a bar, would have insisted on buying you a drink even if they didn't know you, would have kind of put you first and was very gentle, has become to dehumanize you. That, and through the fake, they're FemiNazis. None of them, as I was explaining to my son, are really feminists. If they were, they would be outside protesting in mosques for gender apartheid, for the fact that there's so many female mutilation and nothing is being done. If they did, they would be going to the government protesting on more mosques, more female mutilation. If they were really for females, they would be opposing child marriages. They would be imposing Western views on mosques that they can't talk about hitting your wife or having 4 wives and for this being acceptable. This is why the feminazis are really Marxism, and they're a part of breaking down the culture. And when they talk about female rights, it's always about LGB. It's not actual about heterosexual females. It's always about gay rights or LGBT community. You don't hear really anything else. And there will be a time when they are going to enforce LGB, and if you're not hiring an LGB, even though they're a tiny percentage of the population, you swear that it was nearly half or over half, the way the government force and shoves it down your throat, then you will be criminalised. And that the real people, the real old, strong Irish values will be criminalised. And they're bringing in the ideology that can absolutely destroy females because they don't see them as human. They don't even see them as an animal. They see them as below an animal. They see them as dirt. When the Chief Counsel, when the Human Rights in the UN, Chief Counsel for Human Rights in the UN is Saudi Arabia, who chop off women's heads, who mutilate women, they have 4 wives, or maybe more, depending on how wealthy they are and how many sex slaves they want. When you put these people head of human rights, you know it's a fake organization. Because there is no human rights for women. They don't even see them as human rights. They had a women's council in Saudi Arabia. No women were allowed. It's like a joke. We'll have a women council where no women are allowed. It would be funny if it wasn't so horrific. So they had this women council, and they moved the value of women, which was a pen or a piece of paper belonging to a male, your father, your brother, your uncle, your son. They moved it up to just below a goat. And did any of these FemiNazis or these human rights people come out and say, look, this is so wrong? No, they didn't. What are they talking about? What are these FemiNazis talking about? LGB having the same toilets as males, having the same, nothing to do with normal women, having the same toilets. They want this as a right, rather than whether in Saudi Arabia they can kill a woman for no reason, and when Muslims come in they are marrying 4 women, are marrying children, or mutilating their children because they're females. And they see that having a toilet is more of a fight. Being able to go. So you're a little girl going into toilets with Muslim men, which will be in the future, and men who've decided that they think they're women. And if she gets raped, well, that's okay because diversity is better. Because diversity is suddenly becoming to do with abuse. It's all getting through this hazy, mucky water. They're clouding, they're muddying the water. So you don't really understand. When I keep saying diversity, it's usually pushing abuse of some sort. And then it is heading towards paedophilia. And there is more than even just the paedophilia, and the other group which happens more in Ireland when in the priests, and they had priests hiring other men who weren't even religion, who didn't have any religion as such, who didn't even believe in God, and they would entice them into going into the priesthood, and knowing perfectly well that these men were particularly into teen boys. It's the step after paedophilia. There's a name for it. And they would know, and then they would keep this like a little cult. And this is why so many boys got raped. It wasn't that any of these heard a calling. One disgusting predator saw a loop in how to get lots of young men, and where it wouldn't cause suspicious, or where he wouldn't be called accountable. And then he organised other males, knowing in the circles he was in and encouraging them to join the priesthood. That is what happened. And because most people are asleep all the time, do not realise what the government or what people are doing. And once these sick people get into power, as they are now, in government, we're in in the president, nothing we do or say makes any difference. They have made up their minds already. They want these men who come from Islamic backgrounds. None of them, you'll notice, majority of them aren't even from war zones. They're here to kill us through the government and encouraged by the government. And this is, unfortunately, people who are listening to this show, ITV.ie, Irish News Radio, a majority of them are already awake. The ones who would listen to 2 seconds of what I say and can't bear it, or find it too hard to deal with, or don't want to believe it, or don't believe it. They know one Muslim who's a lovely, lovely person. Yeah, they go to school and none of the things they're saying that happens. Those people, unfortunately, will probably be the first ones killed or their children raped. And even that, they will probably even, at best, as we've seen in Europe, they even deny their child. It's like, well, just because he was brown doesn't mean that it was anything. White men rape to any excuse, even on their own daughters, their own child's lives. Then 1 or 2 of them clocked on, as we saw in Germany. These FemiNazis that were in Germany, open the borders, oh, these poor people, la 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 la. After a while, when they realised they couldn't even walk down the streets, they couldn't go for a coffee, they couldn't get a sandwich, they couldn't go out the door. The FemiNazi had screamed and screamed for these open doors, and these poor souls, the stupidity of them that had been sold from the government, and they bought it because they wanted to believe it. So they believed the stories that the government had told them. So they opened the doors, and then suddenly they had no life. And they admitted, but of course it was on not the main media. They told, and they said, we regret open borders. We now have to leave our towns and villages to somewhere where the migrants aren't coming in, because we can't live here. Most of their friends have been raped or attacked in some ways, purely because they're females. This is the reality of what's coming to us. Now on Gruesome Tuesday, we're going to talk about more of the persecution today, and we will hopefully be talking to Jada Francis in a little bit. So thank you, and thank you for listening on the Bonnery Show, and I'll be talking to you shortly.
You are listening to Irish News Radio at irishnews.net. Email news@irishnews.net.